Hey, and welcome to VFX Tutors. I'm Josh, and in this tutorial we're going to be continuing with our VFX lighting tutorials. We're still going to be doing the portrait lighting, trying to get the best sort of lighting effects, which are single lighting and a backdrop. And we're just going through these different types of portrait shots, which they're quite simple to do, but they're really important to sort of really get a good idea of how lights work in your 3D software. We're using Maya, but they're going to be similar sort of operators and stuff, how you work your lights in other programs as well. So I'm not going to go on. So I hope you've enjoyed this series of just like basic lighting. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more like this. So let's get going. So I've got these files open from my previous one, and you can download all these in the description, and you will get the David bust plinth, the backdrop. Let's just go perspective. The backdrop and all this, and this render camera. It's just the camera right at the origin. Pointing right directly at the bust. So in the previous one, we did the sort of Rembrandt short, and we sort of emphasised on the sort of triangle of light, which is sort of the classic sort of Rembrandt sort of lighting situation where it's like you're trying to create this either triangle of shadow. And you can see it in the basic ones. And there's different variations of this as well. So in this one, we're going to go with the Rembrandt broad. These shouldn't take very long, these tutorials. We're just going to go through them each one by one. And probably by the time you've got to this one, you probably don't need to see the rest. But we're still going to do it anyway, just out of pure just interest. So we noticed that the Rembrandt short, I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the previous one. So you've got like the Rembrandt short, which has got the classic triangular shadow shape on the face. And we're going to move on to the Rembrandt broad. So the difference between these is obviously the short and broad. So if we look at it this way, we've got a shorter profile of the face, and the amount of light hitting the face is it's not fully over the face, but it's not half and half. So when we look at the broad, we've got if we look at the profile of the face, it's very similar, pretty much identical to be honest, but now we've got like a broader sort of lit area, which is exactly what it means. So like you've got a short lit area and the area is much broadly lit with much less shadow cast. And you can see that the triangle is still there, very slightly, you can see it, but it's still there. But it's just not as distinct in this one. So in this one, we're going to do this Rembrandt broad. And we're just going to use one light. So I'm going to start with a fresh light, just so I'm not using the same one over and over. Taking the lights, an area light. And I'll start at the origin. I'm just going to pull this out. And I'm going to scale it up. And remember what I said, when you scale these up, you actually affect the fall off and of the shadow, basically. And we can fix that, but it makes it easier to see. So I'm just going to go back to my camera, my render camera. And we could flip this if we wanted to, or we could just light it backwards. What should we do? Should we... I don't feel that should have any... Let's flip it, see what it looks like. Ooh. That's the wrong way, but anyway. So... just so we can sort of almost match this and change it a little bit. So we're not doing the same position every time. It just makes it a little bit more interesting. So we just flipped it so it's kind of more matching this way. Otherwise we're just making lights on one side. But it doesn't matter, you can do whatever you want. Let's just go through the examples. So, cool. So if we look at opposition of the light, it's almost exactly the same. But our shadow cast is much less, and it looks like we've got much softer lighting around there. And you see our shadow on the nose? It's not as much defined, and our sort of patch on our other side of the face is there's much more light around the top and the bottom of the eye, but it sort of cuts off at the chin. You can see it's much more diffused down here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go to my perspective. Just going to select my light. I'm going to roughly sort of match that position. We can see that the shadow is slightly down on the nose, so I expect it's probably slightly higher. But we can just position it like that, and we'll go to our camera. And what we'll do, I will change this back to 720 and basic samples, just so we're not watching huge renders. Cool, and I'm just going to go to my render view. We've still got our previous ones on there. Delete that. We don't need those. Whoops. Cool, so just going to render that. And as before, our area light's probably well underexposed. And we went through our intensity, which I believe is Kelvin scale. That's why it's so, the numbers have to be so high, and the exposure doesn't have to be so high because it's in stops, I believe. Could be wrong. But if we put it on 10, we can see that we're starting to illuminate our subject now. Like I said before, if we put this on 11, and we can slowly, gradually go up, and you can see it's getting much brighter as we slowly go up. Cool. So we've got this. It's not really giving us much, but what we can see here on the face, obviously our hair is going to be cast a little bit more shadow, but we can tell there's not enough light on the face because we're not getting this light under the eye, and there's like a slight shadow cast around here and a slight on the forehead and around the side of the lips. Because it's a Rembrandt broad, it's got much broader lighting. And at the moment, we're almost at a 50-50 split, which we'll probably do later. So I'm just going to go back to my perspective. And just going to tuck this here. Probably not going to like me very much moving this around whilst it's going. Cool. And you can see that now we're starting to light up more of the face. We're getting much more of this broader lighting, although we're still getting quite a lot on the nose. And when we look here, we're talking like the shadow cast is very much on the side of the nose. So we keep pushing this around. We're going to reduce that cast. Might have to pause it. To update my I think I need to update my computer at some point. I don't think it matters so much if you rotate it, it's more of just a sanity thing. Cool. And we've now got this really broad light, maybe even too much. But kind of, because we've scaled it, don't forget when we scale it, although you can sort of see it's not affecting much in the light, it's only really affecting much of the shadows. And you can see, especially around here, it's affecting it. So it's up to you how you want to sort of tackle these. You can scale it up, or you can use your spread. Obviously, if you scale it up, you can counter it here, but we're going to try and get our spread down just by using the spread. We probably need to bring this a little bit back to the right. Just so we get that lighting. And I think we're possibly a bit too low. So we can see the nose pointing down here. And we're just still using one light, and to get these sort of like really close matches, it's something you may not have to do it to this sort of level where you're matching literally faces. Well, you probably will actually, but this is such good practice to sort of understand what you need to do to sort of get this sort of look. And it's just analysing how your work is basically. So even with this light, obviously our face is slightly different, but we can get it pretty close. So we probably need to push this a little bit right, up a bit more. So now we're getting this, filling this out. It's kind of just filling it out above the lip, maybe even a tiny bit too much. Bring it a tiny bit left, and we need to reduce. We're not going to get it exactly the same, but we can get it pretty close. It might even be a case of reducing the spread. And the samples are quite low and horrible, so let's change it to 3. It's a little bit cleaner. Cool, and we're sort of getting this, maybe we're even a little bit too high. We do want to try and get this as close, and we've got this, obviously the lips, it's not going to be the same, but we can try and get similarities with the gap in the light above the lip and the sort of nose here. It's not as dark around here, so we could maybe bring down the exposure. And you can see how the spread is now brightening it, but we're sort of making these shadows slightly darker. And it's understanding the sort of play between the two of your exposure and your spread. You're going to get more diffused lighting with a larger spread, but not as harsh shadows. But with your spread less, you're going to get more of a spotlight-y sort of effect. But yeah, anyway, so we've got this. We can see our chin is, the neck's coming, the shadows come down, so ours is kind of quite, it's going across, so it's possibly, it's not going to be the same, but we can get it close. It's worth trying to get it as best we can, I think. But I don't think we're going to get it exactly the shapes, but we can go for these sort of key things with the nose and the gap above. So let's bring that back over here. So now we've lost the sharpness on the nose. And we've got this sort of darks around here. Let's reduce our spread. Because if we bring our spread right down, it's obviously going to look really nasty and quite overexposed. We don't want that spotlight effect. We want to position the light in a way that we want it. Not 135. And obviously you can change this. Obviously, if we bring it closer, it's going to change it as well. So be wary of that. If you bring it closer and further away from the the subject, it's going to change the lighting. So, I'm looking at it probably too close. And I'm not sure if we're going to get it absolutely perfect, but I would like a little bit more shadow cast on the left side of the face. Let's see if we can achieve that by bringing it across. Tiny bit too much. You can see even just the slightest amount, it's just kind of made it too much on the nose for me. But then it's all down to your personal taste, really. So I feel like we've got a pretty good result from this. I think this is probably pretty much done for this Rembrandt broad. So we've got the broad lighting across the face. We've still just about can see the triangle of light, which is classic Rembrandt. And we've got the sort of, instead of the original where you only had the light under the eyes, we've now got a much broader light across the face with smaller amounts of shadows and a small line of light going across the top lip and there. So yeah, that was it was 15 minutes, that tutorial. After you've done these, it won't take you 15 minutes to do this. It's probably because I'm just talking too much over the top of it. But yeah, that's the Rembrandt broad, and on the next one we'll go on to the split, which should be fairly simple and quick, but we'll just go through as many of the different ones as possible. And it's mostly experiment, because this is just still a single light, and you see people going crazy straight away with 3-point lighting, and sometimes they spend ages and it looks awful. Master one light first, get the best from one light, then add the more lights afterwards. Don't go straight in with all the lights, otherwise it's going to be chaos and you'll just make a mess. So always start with one light and just get the best from that one single light first. Because for me, I'm quite happy with this. I wouldn't necessarily want to put any more lights in it because it's simplistic lighting. A lot of the time it's Hollywood lighting, which doesn't really exist in reality. But for me, I quite like this. But you've got to. It's your own work, so like I always says, like there are obviously rules in photography and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's your work. Feel free to do whatever you want. It's there's no rules to your own artwork. So yeah. Anyway, I'm going on. I think we're pretty much done. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. And we'll move on to the next one. So don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more like this. Thanks for listening.